Sergeant Ranger, today's date is 3/25/21, time is 13:01 hours. We're with Captain Shaun Case, reference I number 21-0112. So I'll start off with reading you your pre-interview admonition for witness interviews. You're being interviewed as part of an official non-criminal investigation by the police department, and as such are ordered to answer all questions truthfully, completely, and without evasion. If you refuse to testify or to answer questions, you'll be subject to discipline up to and including termination. Do you understand the direct order you just been given?
Yes.
I got a pen here, unless you want to use your own. Make sure you sign it there. It says witness. I know you know how these forms work, because you used to read them to people too.
What is the date today? October 5th.
Thank you. Alright, so we'll hear about some comments that were made by Lieutenant Henry. It sounds like they were made following a meeting that you had with Sergeant Abbott and Lieutenant Henry and down at in the backgrounds unit about improving minorities, getting them through the background process and just basically improving the overall makeup of the number of minorities through the background process. That was kind of the gist of the meeting. But I was hoping you could kind of tell me what the meeting was about, because it sounds like that precipitated the comment that was made by Henry and kind of puts it in some context. So I was hoping we could just start there. You could tell me what that meeting was about, how that went, what you said, what kind of feedback you got from them, and then how we got to the comment that he made. I think it was like the next day.
Increasing diversity within the police department is how I like to term it.
Okay. I knew you could term it better than I could.
So a couple different things. So background, and I don't want to bore you with a bunch of detail, but just kind of some background. So a year ago, February, when I took over admin, I immediately started looking into the hiring steps, the process that we have, to include looking at the gender and racial makeup of each background investigator. Do we have an investigator that only hires, one gender, one race, that sort of thing. And also develop what we were going to do, I believe in May of last year, if COVID wouldn't have hit, an all-female recruiting event, a day-long event, half-day to a day-long event. I think we kind of settle on a day. Would be all women from the department, all areas of the department, all ranks, all assignments. Bring them here at headquarters and doing a presentation, doing a question and answer with the theory of, if you're a female in a male-dominated field and you go to a male recruiter, probably not going to want to ask questions like, what happens if I get pregnant in the academy? Or, all this gear on, like, what happens if you have to go to the bathroom and like shit? Yeah. I mean, these things that we don't think about as guys because we're guys, right? And so, this has kind of been something that I started from the very beginning when I got into the unit. Shortly after I started looking at the backgrounds and hiring practices that we do, I found out the municipality actually does like an affirmative action report periodically, and that we were well overdue for doing one. And they pulled data out of NeoGov and they analyzed the numbers. Had no idea this was going on, but became aware of it once they put together like their preliminary data, and it went through Media Legal and eventually made its way to us. And we went through several months up in through probably June-ish, July of the summer. I remember our last real meeting. It actually caused the city manager at the time and the chief of staff to go through the written test, the PAT, and I don't remember how many more steps they completed, but they actually decided they wanted to go through a portion of the backgrounds process based on these numbers.
Oh, themselves, like they put themselves through it.
Yeah, they put themselves through it, right? Backgrounds knew who they were and what they were doing and why they were doing it. And the numbers showed, I don't like to use the word discriminatory practices because, it's a straight number, right? But I can tell you the person that was doing it for the municipality was like, hey, the numbers are the numbers. They are what they are. What they basically looked at is the discrepancy between your white applicants and your non-white applicants. And they broke the process up into 4 different pieces, and they looked at each block individually. And we spent quite a bit of time looking over those numbers and kind of determining, there isn't anything overt here that we're doing, right? There's nothing that we're, I didn't take the data. I don't think anyone in this building took the data as, we're using discriminatory hiring practices within the police department. But what was interesting through that process was even a conversation with the city manager and the HR director and the chief, myself. We were talking about different stages of the hiring process. And I remember one particular call in the middle of summer last year where everybody on the call was like, hey, because one of the problems we have a big no-show rate. Not showing up for testing, not showing up for interviews, and then of course they get dropped from the process.
Yeah.
And I remember the conversation being, hey, if these folks don't want to show up to their meeting or their appointment, probably not going to be good cops, we probably don't want them. And I said, or we can look at it a different way. What if there's another reason they're not showing up for the process? What if it's a transportation issue? What if it's I work 3 different jobs? What if it's, who knows what the issue is, but for us to dismiss everybody because they don't show up for an appointment is like a classic kind of very structured, rigid way of thinking. If we want to look at changing these numbers, we should be asking more questions than just the process. As long as it's applied exactly the same for every single person, we're going to call it a fair process and therefore we're good. So that's kind of the context of how we rolled through the year. And as we got into this current process right here, there's a couple things that I started looking at, and I've been looking at very specific pieces of the process, kind of each recruiting class that we have, because it's a pretty large task, and keeping track of as a captain, keeping track of each people that go in and out of the process when you start with 450 people-ish, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Like a little bit underneath my pay grade, but like really want to understand each step of the process and where it's going to go wrong. So the one thing that I primarily wanted to look at on this particular hiring process is the written test. Who passes, who doesn't, what are the rates of passing, which I already knew kind of the rates. But there's kind of a theory of if you, and it started with, some publication I read months and months ago, and I'm not even sure I could find it again, but nevertheless, had to do with women in math testing in the environment that they're in the math testing. Okay, what they found is that that math is a male-dominated field. There's like tons of research on like why is math a male-dominated field, and then the testing environment. And they looked at you put a female in a room with a bunch of males, and her test score is going to be lower than the rest of the room than if you were to put her in a room that was more made up of females, right? And part of that is because there's inherent biases that we have, and maybe not you, but or maybe you didn't know this, but math is considered a male-dominated field. It's considered, men are better at math for various reasons people think, right?
Yeah.
And so that leads to women performing poorly when they're in an environment where it's not like half women or whatever, right? And so I looked into that a little bit more, and I thought, well, that also applies to race as well, right? So you take one white guy and you put him in a room of all black people and have them take a test that they're stress-induced, and I would say that if you fail the test, you don't get a job or you don't move on the process. There's some stress involved in that, right?
Yeah.
Would their test scores be better if they were in a room or in an environment that was different from one non-white person and generally everybody else were white males? There's going to be a female in there, and there's going to be, maybe, one black person, one Hispanic, whatever. But the makeup of the room we know is predominantly white males. And we know that white males dominate policing, right? And so I wanted to try, actually, to have an off-site location, in this case it'd be Cook Inlet Tribal Council, that wanted to host the testing, where we invited some of our non-white candidates that failed the test and put them in an environment that was different from police department, your typical setting, and to see what their scores are. And I can't think of a lot of downfall to that, but that was one of the reasons why I had this meeting with the sergeant and the lieutenant.
Yeah.
And then the second piece of the meeting was, because of the way we were doing the backgrounds this go around, putting a lot of emphasis on our out-of-state laterals, as well as some of our non-sworn positions that we want to fill, because we want to have a records and a dispatch academy coming up here in May, I believe. Our regular backgrounds kind of just slowed a little bit. And so I've been telling Shaun for a little while, hey, we need to start thinking about if we have to prioritize applications that we go through, and so that we're not doing all of the people that come to backgrounds if we don't have enough time.
Yeah.
So those were the two topics. When I sat down and talked with them, there was, I would say that the level of resistance to having this conversation was so high, they probably heard about 10% of what I was saying. For instance, they really got stuck on fair. This isn't fair. Talking about the testing, right? Why is it not fair? Well, you're giving them an opportunity you're not giving somebody else. They're not actually going to have an opportunity. The passing score is the same. They're not going to get into the June Academy. It's going to be the December Academy, just like somebody else who failed the written test for the June Academy. The written rules in the kind of the manual for background investigators is that if you fail the written test, you can retake it in 6 months.
Okay.
I asked why. Like, what's the deal? They didn't really have the answer. And so some of that conversation was. Somebody just blocked the door.
I was thinking that.
And some of the conversation was like, tell me what the unfair advantage is if somebody takes the test 3 months after they fail it, but still doesn't get into the June, like they're still going to the December Academy, which every other person will get in the June Academy too. If you take the test 3 months instead of 6 months, is there an unfair advantage in the actual test itself? They didn't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
And so they were like, but it's not fair. Why not? They're getting a different opportunity. And I even remember saying, like, I don't want to get into the, like, equal and equitable conversation, but, like, kind of the point of doing this experiment is maybe it's not fair, right? Maybe the testing environment that we have isn't fair to this group of people. So my argument's actually counter. What if it's not fair?
Yeah.
What if a more equitable thing is that we do have a testing environment that's off-site? And it, I mean, like it was, no, we have a process. The process is standard. This is the way it is. We will follow it 100% to the T. And that's the only way that we can legitimately justify our process. Like, I got that. But I will tell you that you can talk to many people that have been through many processes where everything is identical as you can make it from employee to employee or person to person. And they will tell you that I don't think the process was fair. And some of those are non-white males, right? And really what they're saying is there's some equity things in there.
Yeah.
We're not happy with it. Did not like it. Really upset by it. So I said, we're going to keep going through the motion to do this. Set up a meeting at Cook County Tribal Council. We could see the testing facility, see what it looked like, see if it would work for us. I had some other things that I had to deal with too, on my end to make sure this could be a go.
Yeah.
And in the end, it was less about, I canceled it, and it was less about the fact that we couldn't make it work. It was more about the fact that I've got a background in a recruiting unit that I kind of left in the dust. And, like, I got to go back and really try to get them to understand some of the concepts that I'm talking about in the hiring process.
Get some more buy-in or something.
Get some more buy-in, yeah. Like, I was clearly steamrolling them.
Yeah.
And that's not my objective. The second part of the conversation was about the packets. They didn't have any ideas when we started the meeting. And so I said, I've got two things to think about. Prong number one, and I was very clear, particularly after the portion of the conversation about the testing. Prong number one is this. Your background investigators, because at this point in time they will have all done the initial interview, so every background investigator would have met everybody that made it to that point. So it's not just raw numbers or papers they filled out. Like they would have had FaceTime.
Yeah.
So based on the training experience of your background investigators, they go through and select what they would be consider their top candidates, right? Based on selection criteria and things like that are in the manual. They've been doing this a long time. And, most of them, I mean, more than half the unit is ready to time out on the 5 years.
Yeah.
Like 3 of the 5, right? So they've been doing this a while. And they were pretty warm to that. And I said, but here's a second tier that you're not going to like. If we were to do something like that, we're throwing in our non-white applicants in there. Because I simply can't defend if all of our background investigators take their top applicants and they're all white males, right?
Yeah.
And the first time that we prioritized our background packets, what do you know? We prioritized all of our white males at the top and non-white males at the bottom. We just can't defend that.
Yeah.
And, based on their comments, I mean, it was pretty clear that it was like, you're eliminating the white people. I'm like, I'm not eliminating white people. That's not what I said. They talked about reverse discrimination. I was like, stop talking. Reverse discrimination doesn't exist. Stop it. Discrimination exists, but stop, right? It was this conversation where they just got really bent out of joint. And I told them, if you guys can handle the work and you guys can work overtime and you guys can get through the packets, get through all the packets. I'm not telling you this is what you have to do. What I'm telling you is if you can't get through the packets, you're going to have to try to figure out a way that we can get through at least what we would consider our best applicants. So that was kind of the gist of the conversation, in terms of both those topics. We left that conversation where they were going to think about kind of something else that they could do. I actually had a meeting with the whole unit a couple days later, the next week, I think.
Yeah.
Because it was pretty clear the feedback that I was getting after that meeting ended and they went and talked to their employees was not even close to what happened in that meeting.
Yeah. That was just a meeting between you, Lieutenant Henry, and Sergeant Abbott.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the words were case wants to eliminate the white applicants, and one thing that I learned, not from them, I learned from the fallout,
Yeah.
which again, a little bit disheartening that they weren't willing to have that conversation, right? They weren't willing to think about increasing diversity. And there was even multiple times where I'd say, stop talking about just race. It's all diversity. A little bit easier to talk about gender and race, right? Because if you go back to the report earlier in the last year, right?
Yeah.
That's what it was. It was numbers based on the racial category that went.
Yeah.
But there was definitely a bit of an understanding. The thing that I learned was several years ago we had more qualified applicants, than we had spots. And what we ended up doing from a captain in chief level was we found let's just say we had 45 packets that made it to our desk, and we ended up having an academy of 32 several years ago, if you remember.
Yeah.
That. It was the biggest one we had.
Yeah.
And what we did was we took those 32 applicants, we put them in the academy, and we said, hey, of these remaining, the majority of those folks were good to go as well.
Yeah.
And so what our plan was and what our directive was that those folks would get rolled over into the next academy. Well, unbeknownst to me and anybody else up here, that's not how it actually works. They have to reapply. And again, something that would have been great during our conversation with the sergeant and lieutenant of the unit, I found that out later on when I was having a conversation with the backgrounds investigator, and I was like, didn't know that from several years ago when we had that large academy.
Yeah.
That also is a little bit of a game changer when you talk about now prioritizing packets.
Yeah. Is that just because that's part of the process that we have in place?
It's the meaty thing, where they have cohorts that they work with, and part of it's because, again, if you look at that report they want to do, they want to be able to pull, hey, who applied for this academy? And they can't do that with accurate numbers if they have this people applied, and then these 7 people
From the previous
kind of behind our
process,
back just got thrown into that pile. They don't know that.
Yeah. Okay.
So it kind of makes sense once it was explained to me. Some of the comments that were made in the meeting with just the 3 of us was what are we going to do if this works with the testing? Are we going to have someone stand at the end of the hall and be like, okay, well, if you're white, you take a left, and if you're not white, take a right? And I'm just like, guys, you guys are getting so bent out of shape. You're thinking of things that are ridiculous. Like, understand what we're trying to do. Let's walk through the process. Talk about that. One of my solutions for that question is maybe we offer 2 different testing sites, and you can sign up at whatever testing site you want to do. Right? Like, how about that's a solution and not something crazy? Like, I was a little disheartened by our conversation. Right? Like, it was a little disappointing to me that I didn't have a sergeant and lieutenant that were like, okay, I feel for what you're getting, Captain. Let's try to figure out if we can figure something out.
Yeah.
I met with the unit. Definitely had to clean up some stuff. Right, there were some things that were relayed to them, differently.
Yeah.
And in that meeting, Sergeant Abbott, because he had some suggestions from people in the room about, hey, we could probably prioritize our packets. Like, we could probably do that. And at this point, Abbott was like, I don't even want to get involved in having to be like the sergeant that prioritizes packets, and then maybe there's some like, we're just going to work overtime to get these done, which totally fine with me. So in the end, none of these 2 things are even a thing.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely going to go back and rehab these conversations again.
Yeah.
So those are the meetings. So again, more information that you wanted.
Sets the stage at least.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So after the initial meeting, and I guess before you had the meeting with the background unit,
Mm-hmm.
did you talk with Captain Nolder about the meeting and?
Yes, I believe it was.
Follow up from that?
I believe it was on a Thursday. I think he and Henry had a conversation on the day before.
Okay.
And I was talking to Nolder about hiring and these numbers and diversity within the department, these sorts of things that we discussed. And he said that he had a conversation, I believe it was over the phone with Henry. I could be wrong there though. And Henry brought up the conversation that I had with Lieutenant Henry and Sergeant Abbott. I think the way it was relayed to me, he asked Josh what was wrong with me.
Okay.
And so they had a conversation, and Josh kind of relays parts of that conversation, and then the comment that was made was that Shaun said something to the effect of, and this is a loose paraphrase, obviously, because this is third hand here, but he made a comment linking Alaska Natives getting through the background portion of the hiring process, not being able to get through that portion because they're busy drinking and raping their women. And when Josh relayed that portion of the story, he was like, I told him immediately, like, that's unacceptable. Don't ever say that. And I was kind of like, I didn't even really know what to say at that point in time, because here I got a lieutenant in a backgrounds unit that makes a pretty broad statement. Mm-hmm. And incidentally, as kind of a side note, right now the training center for its diversity training is taking a pretty big hit. One of the things is a video that's shown, and in the video, officers are referring to natives at one point as drunks, and like the chiefs immediately got rid of this video once they had a complaint on it.
Yeah.
And the native community is not thrilled about that video and some of the words that are used in that video and how it paints native members of our community.
Yeah.
I think this goes well beyond some of the stuff in that video.
Yeah.
And so, we got done with our conversation. I went on my merry way. And later on that night, I called Josh, and I was like, what exactly did Shaun say? Because, like, it's been a couple hours since I heard that comment, and it's just really, it's weighing on me. Like, that's not okay. So he basically repeated the thing again.
Did he use the same terminology?
Yep, same terminology. I think the second time he told me he was a little more specific on, like, raping our women and children or something like that, but basically the same comment.
And was your understanding that was the same language that Lieutenant Henry used?
Yes. Yeah, because when I called him, I'm like, what exactly did he say? Like, what is the exact verbiage that he said? Like, were you relaying this to me incorrectly? Is this kind of a, And so that's what he relayed to me. And he told me, he's like, like he was in SVU, so he dealt with a lot of these cases, so like he's seen a lot of things, and I'm like, well, I realize that you're trying to put it in context for him, like for his career, like did he say those things? Well, no. And I asked him how he reacted. Like, what did he say? What did he do? And he said, well, Henry's worked for me before. He kind of looked at me. He didn't really say anything, but working with him as I have, like, I know when Shaun just stops talking, kind of looks at you like he understood what I meant. And I was like, so there was no, you're right, I apologize, I got it. No. And I told Josh, I said, I got a real big problem with this.
Yeah.
Like, I got a big problem with this. Like, I don't know how, if that was the statement that was made, we as an organization can say that that's appropriate at all. Like, if the public knew that statement was made by the lieutenant of our backgrounds unit, I mean, there's just no way, we don't defend that at all.
Yeah.
There's just nothing we can do.
Yeah.
And, and he said, hey, look, this was kind of viewed as a confidential conversation, like a private conversation with the two of us. And I said, look, I get that, and I understand that now I'm putting another captain in a crappy place because he thought he was having that confidential conversation with the lieutenant.
Yeah.
But, like, this is actually one of the fundamental things that we dealt with in 2020 as a police community, right? Just because we didn't say it to the public, we said it in a work setting about your specific job, right? Like, this group of people can't get through the backgrounds process because I'm going to generalize, which is a bias.
Yeah.
And we can have a debate whether or not that's a race-motivated comment. I would say that it is, because he's actually applying it to the community, to that group, and why they're unsuccessful at doing something, right? Because you're busy getting drunk and raping women, like that. I don't know, like, and I told Josh, I'm like, I know, like, nobody wants to look at another person and say, hey, I think you're racist, right? Because, like, nobody wants to do that, say that. We don't know what's in people's hearts. But as an organization, like, you have to go, what does that mean for this employee? And, I think about all the conversations that I've been in, and we've all been in, 80 conversations and closed-door conversations where we've said stupid things that we don't want the public to hear. We've seen things, we've heard things. But very rarely, if ever, do I remember hearing comments like that in those type of private conversations in this police department. Like, it's just, I think that goes pretty far over the line.
Yeah.
And so, the conversation with Josh on the phone that Thursday was kind of like, hey, like, I want you to think about this over the weekend. Like, think about this, because I just don't know how, as a commander, saying that we do the right thing means that we just say, oh, you dealt with it then, and you dealt with this by saying never say that again, and then he didn't even acknowledge, he just looked at you. I don't know if that's an acknowledgement.
Yeah.
And I get the apprehension, right? I get, the implications of an IA investigation, and when you weigh, okay, let's bring Shaun back in and sit him down and give him the real what for, and let him know that that absolutely is unacceptable. It's not the values that we have at the police department. Let him have it. And we certainly could have taken that route, but I just don't know how that translates to people of color who are like, oh, so you basically just told him to knock it off, or next time, right? Like,
yeah.
When we handle all of our complaints much, much more seriously than that, right? Like, our whole complaint system is, someone complains, you sit down like this, basically, right?
Yeah.
So,
did Josh say, like, what his pushback was or what his comments were to Lieutenant Henry, other than you can never say that again? Was there anything else that he said to Henry? That he relayed to you, I guess, that he said to Henry, because obviously it's secondhand, so.
He just told me that he felt that the comment was inappropriate, not okay.
Yeah.
He relayed that to Shaun. And that was kind of the other thing that I told Josh. I'm like, if you intervened and you said that this comment that he made was not okay, what does that mean, right? Like, are we on the end of the spectrum where it's like, you say something that that someone could get offended at if they're, based on their gender or based on their race. That's one of those comments that are like, huh, I didn't know that, right? Like, you've even used the word minority in this meeting. Well, recently I found out that the minority community doesn't like the word minority because the base word is minor, which means it's less than, and they would prefer saying people of color.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say that you're making a race related, like that's just, that's on the end of the spectrum. Like, oh, huh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Unaware. I kind of feel like this falls on the opposite end of the spectrum. Like, I think everybody should know that.
Yeah.
I think if those words came out of any of our mouths, we probably would go, sorry. I'm like, sorry. And I think what kind of irritates me the most is that he was frustrated, he was angry, and then those words let loose.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. I think you answered most of my questions, but I know you'd mentioned that you found the comment to be biased and like a generalization of a particular race of people, which is pretty clear. Would you say that you found the comment to be racist or disparaging towards Alaska Natives? I mean, I understand.
Oh, I think by definition, yeah. I mean, disparaging, like, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've got a very good relationship with some, I mentioned Cook Inlet Tribal Council and some of the other Native groups in Anchorage, and like, I don't even know what I would say or do if they found out a member of our department said something like that. Like, I just don't know what I'd say.
Yeah.
I mean, my head would drop, and I'm sorry. All I can do is apologize, right? Like, it's...
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty obvious there'd be significant public backlash if that comment got out where the public knew that a lieutenant, especially lieutenants over the background recruiting unit, made a comment like that. When they're making decisions about, or over the unit that makes decisions about who gets hired at the police department, who doesn't get hired. So, yeah, I understand that. So, and I would have to agree with that. I pretty much think you answered all my questions, so I don't think there's any other questions I had for you. It sounds like you don't know if that conversation happened in person or it was over the phone with Nolder and Lieutenant Henry. Okay, it sounds like Henry told me it was over the phone, so.
Yeah, and that's what I heard too, and then when Josh was kind of like the silence and he just kind of had that look, like I'm missing something there in context there.
Yeah.
But
okay. So just
Josh clear that up for you.
Just to kind of throw that out there. Yeah, I talked to him already, so that's what he told me. So, but it makes sense you would know that. So, all right. Is there anything I didn't ask you that I should ask you, or that you think is important to know that we haven't already talked about, or?
I think that's it.
Okay. All right. I think you pretty much covered it all. So we will conclude the interview now at I watched this at 13:33 hours.